Our analysis today is drawn from Chapter 4 of Information Technology Policy and Strategy by Professor Richard Boateng at the University of Ghana Business School. When executives sit down to draft an IT strategy, the default behavior is to produce a shopping list. They authorize software purchases, approve server upgrades, and renew licensing agreements. Those are procurements, not strategies. A true IT strategy is a calculated response to a business model. It defines exactly how the firm interacts with its environment to create value, and how technology forces that interaction. A plan drawn up on a whiteboard holds no value without the physical capabilities and resources required to execute it. The technology must possess the specific bandwidth, processing power, and architecture to support the firm's chosen market opportunities. If an organization's technological infrastructure operates independently of its core business model, those systems degrade into a massive operational sinkhole. The hardware and software consume capital without driving corporate value. Effective IT planning requires laying out the exact requirements for human capital, infrastructure architectures, and internal policies over a multi-year horizon. When those resources are deployed correctly, they yield three distinct categories of benefits: strategic, informational, and operational. Organizations typically capture operational efficiencies first, streamlining supply chains or automating payroll. From there, they generate informational efficiency. Managing information technology without governance is essentially enterprise direction draws a immediately clearing corporate mandate. The final section of the coordinating team analyzes existing industry standard network. Implementing policy is a human problem. This stage requires active training. Managing information technology without governance is essentially organized chaos. Servers are provisioned ad hoc, access rights are granted on request, and security is left to individual discretion. To convert a scattered data environment into a secure, predictable architecture, an organization requires a mechanism to enforce order. That core mechanism is an IT policy. But an effective policy is rarely a simple list of rules pinned to a breakroom board. It is a highly engineered, modular framework designed to dictate exactly how hardware, software, and human operators interact. The mechanics of these frameworks are detailed in Information Technology Policy and Strategy, authored by Professor Richard Boateng of the University of Ghana Business School. While early chapters of the text separate the theory of policy from the methodology of strategy, the core engineering of these documents happens later. Our focus relies strictly on the mechanics outlined in Chapter 3. We are now examining how an organization actually builds, structures, and implements these directives from the ground up. Creating an effective IT policy requires two distinct structures operating simultaneously: a rigid document architecture to hold the rules, and a dynamic organizational workflow to deploy them. Boateng breaks this down into two specific models. First, a 12-component blueprint for drafting the physical document. Second, an 8-step lifecycle pipeline used to build and maintain it. An organization can outline abstract security goals all year. Mastering these two intersecting models is the absolute only way to translate those goals into enforceable human behavior. This diagram represents the standardized 12-component blueprint that serves as the foundation for every formal IT policy. Depending on the scale of the organization, a single document might not utilize every single block, but this structure remains the baseline. To see how this framework is populated, we can deconstruct a standard enterprise directive, the Clean Desk Policy. The first two components capture the necessary tracking data. Policy information details version numbers, active dates, and status, while the overview provides an executive summary of the document. Component B establishes the purpose and rationale. To secure employee buy-in, the document must state the precise business or security justification for the rules it is about to enforce. Component 4 dictates the scope. This section draws a hard line around the policy, explicitly defining exactly who and what technologies are governed by these rules. These first 4 blocks form the meta layer. They do not dictate any specific behavior yet. Instead, they build the legal and operational boundaries required for the actual rules to function. With the boundary set, the document moves into the operational layer. Component 5 is authorization, identifying the specific governing body responsible for managing the policy. In our Clean Desk example, this authorization is assigned to the Office of Corporate Information Systems, or OCIS. Naming this office grants them the exclusive power to interpret and manage the rules. Component 6 contains the policy, standards, and guidelines. This is the core of the document, detailing the specific behavioral directives employees must follow. For a Clean Desk directive, this section mandates actions like actively locking workstations when stepping away and immediately clearing printer trays so sensitive documents are not left out in the open. But rules mean very little without enforcement. Component 7 establishes policy compliance. Here, the text dictates exactly how adherence is measured. For the Clean Desk policy, that means periodic walkthroughs, video monitoring, and internal audits, along with a clear outline of the consequences for noncompliance. Pairing the precise directives in Component 6 with the measurable metrics in Component 7 is what turns a corporate suggestion into an enforceable corporate mandate. The final section of the blueprint manages external context and future updates. Component 8 lists related standards to anchor the document to external laws, while Component 9 provides a strict glossary of definitions and terms to remove any ambiguity. Components 10 and 11 outline dissemination and maintenance. These dictate exactly how the rules will be shared with the workforce and how the policy will be kept up to date. Dissemination requires a multi-channel approach. Relying solely on an employee handbook is insufficient. The document stipulates the use of educational seminars, intranet portals, and direct email notifications to guarantee maximum reach. Finally, Component 12 is the revision history. This acts as a vital audit log detailing every change made over time, the date of that change, and the party responsible. That completes the 12-part blueprint. But a perfect document sitting in isolation on a hard drive is useless. To build, approve, and execute that structure, the organization needs an assembly line. That assembly line is Boateng's 8-step policy development process. It is the sequential pipeline required to bring the document to life. Step 1 is initiate and establish structures. Policy work is resource-intensive, so it only begins when there is a compelling organizational need. These initiation triggers are concrete events: the adoption of new cloud technologies, shifting government regulations, or newly identified vulnerabilities in the firm's operations. Step 2 is review and research. Before writing a single word, the coordinating team analyzes existing industry standards and global legal frameworks to understand the constraints. Step 3 is draft. This is where the actual writing happens, and where the coordinating team fills out the 12-component blueprint we just deconstructed. Step 4 is consult and discuss. The draft is circulated to legal counsel, middle management, and end users to gauge how the rules will actually impact daily operations. Step 5 is approval. The revised draft is sent up the chain for formal sign-off from the board or senior executive committee. These first 5 steps make up the formulation phase. They systematically take a raw business risk and transform it into an authorized, highly structured governance tool. The pipeline shifts from theory to reality in Step 6, implementation. The approved provisions go live across the network. Implementing policy is a human problem. This stage requires active training to ensure all relevant employees are fully familiar with the new mandates and understand how to execute them. Step 7 is monitoring. An organization cannot assume compliance. They must proactively verify if the policy is working as intended in the real world. This monitoring relies entirely on the compliance metrics established back in Component 7 of the document, utilizing periodic audits and operational feedback to track performance. That feedback data feeds directly into the final phase, Step 8, review, evaluate, and revision. At predetermined intervals, the overall impact of the policy is evaluated against its original goals. Any gaps or new risks are identified, looping right back into Step 1 to trigger a new cycle of updates. A corporate policy is never finished. It operates as a continuous, cyclic engine of organizational alignment. Comparing the blueprint and development pipeline side by side reveals how deeply they intersect. Implementing rules in Step 6 depends entirely on Component 10 to disseminate them. When reaching Step 8 to revise, that action is recorded directly into Component 12's revision history. This interlocking system supports Professor Boateng's central philosophy: policies must be credible, implementable, enforceable, and sustainable. He defines this framework as an action-oriented living document. To survive contact with reality, a policy must constantly adapt. Initial implementations fail and technologies change. When that happens, the organization iterates. As illustrated, Plan A is crossed out for Plan B and eventually Plan C, ensuring the document always matches the current operational environment. The true power of IT governance lies exactly at this intersection. By pairing a rigid 12-part document architecture with a relentless 8-step operational lifecycle, an organization ensures its IT strategy actually becomes reality. Managing information technology without governance is essentially organized chaos. Servers are provisioned ad hoc, access rights are granted on request, and security is left to individual discretion. To convert a scattered data environment into a secure, predictable architecture, an organization requires a mechanism to enforce order. That core mechanism is an IT policy. But an effective policy is rarely a simple list of rules pinned to a breakroom board. It is a highly engineered, modular framework designed to dictate exactly how hardware, software, and human operators interact. The mechanics of these frameworks are detailed in Information Technology Policy and Strategy, authored by Professor Richard Boateng of the University of Ghana Business School. While early chapters of the text separate the theory of policy from the methodology of strategy, the core engineering of these documents happens later. Our focus relies strictly on the mechanics outlined in Chapter 3. We are now examining how an organization actually builds, structures, and implements these directives from the ground up. Creating an effective IT policy requires two distinct structures operating simultaneously: a rigid document architecture to hold the rules, and a dynamic organizational workflow to deploy them. Boateng breaks this down into two specific models. First, a 12-component blueprint for drafting the physical document. Second, an 8-step lifecycle pipeline used to build and maintain it. An organization can outline abstract security goals all year. Mastering these two intersecting models is the absolute only way to translate those goals into enforceable human behavior. This diagram represents the standardized 12-component blueprint that serves as the foundation for every formal IT policy. Depending on the scale of the organization, a single document might not utilize every single block, but this structure remains the baseline. To see how this framework is populated, we can deconstruct a standard enterprise directive, the Clean Desk Policy. The first two components capture the necessary tracking data. Policy information details version numbers, active dates, and status, while the overview provides an executive summary of the document. Component B establishes the purpose and rationale. To secure employee buy-in, the document must state the precise business or security justification for the rules it is about to enforce. Component 4 dictates the scope. This section draws a hard line around the policy, explicitly defining exactly who and what technologies are governed by these rules. These first 4 blocks form the meta layer. They do not dictate any specific behavior yet. Instead, they build the legal and operational boundaries required for the actual rules to function. With the boundary set, the document moves into the operational layer. Component 5 is authorization, identifying the specific governing body responsible for managing the policy. In our Clean Desk example, this authorization is assigned to the Office of Corporate Information Systems, or OCIS. Naming this office grants them the exclusive power to interpret and manage the rules. Component 6 contains the policy, standards, and guidelines. This is the core of the document, detailing the specific behavioral directives employees must follow. For a Clean Desk directive, this section mandates actions like actively locking workstations when stepping away and immediately clearing printer trays so sensitive documents are not left out in the open. But rules mean very little without enforcement. Component 7 establishes policy compliance. Here, the text dictates exactly how adherence is measured. For the clean desk policy, that means periodic walkthroughs, video monitoring, and internal audits, along with a clear outline of the consequences for noncompliance. Pairing the precise directives in Component 6 with the measurable metrics in Component 7 is what turns a corporate suggestion into an enforceable corporate mandate. The final section of the blueprint manages external context and future updates. Component 8 lists related standards to anchor the document to external laws, while Component 9 provides a strict glossary of definitions and terms to remove any ambiguity. Components 10 and 11 outline dissemination and maintenance. These dictate exactly how the rules will be shared with the workforce and how the policy will be kept up to date. Dissemination requires a multi-channel approach. Relying solely on an employee handbook is insufficient. The document stipulates the use of educational seminars, intranet portals, and direct email notifications to guarantee maximum reach. Finally, Component 12 is the revision history. This acts as a vital audit log detailing every change made over time, the date of that change, and the party responsible. That completes the 12-part blueprint. But a perfect document sitting in isolation on a hard drive is useless. To build, approve, and execute that structure, the organization needs an assembly line. That assembly line is Boateng's 8-step policy development process. It is the sequential pipeline required to bring the document to life. Step 1 is initiate and establish structures. Policy work is resource-intensive, so it only begins when there is a compelling organizational need. These initiation triggers are concrete events: the adoption of new cloud technologies, shifting government regulations, or newly identified vulnerabilities in the firm's operations. Step 2 is review and research. Before writing a single word, the coordinating team analyzes existing industry standards and global legal frameworks to understand the constraints. Step 3 is draft. This is where the actual writing happens, and where the coordinating team fills out the 12-component blueprint we just deconstructed. Step 4 is consult and discuss. The draft is circulated to legal counsel, middle management, and end users to gauge how the rules will actually impact daily operations. Step 5 is approval. The revised draft is sent up the chain for formal sign-off from the board or senior executive committee. These first 5 steps make up the formulation phase. They systematically take a raw business risk and transform it into an authorized, highly structured governance tool. The pipeline shifts from theory to reality in Step 6, implementation. The approved provisions go live across the network. Implementing policy is a human problem. This stage requires active training to ensure all relevant employees are fully familiar with the new mandates and understand how to execute them. Step 7 is monitoring. An organization cannot assume compliance. They must proactively verify if the policy is working as intended in the real world. This monitoring relies entirely on the compliance metrics established back in Component 7 of the document, utilizing periodic audits and operational feedback to track performance. That feedback data feeds directly into the final phase, Step 8, review, evaluate, and revision. At predetermined intervals, the overall impact of the policy is evaluated against its original goals. Any gaps or new risks are identified, looping right back into Step 1 to trigger a new cycle of updates. A corporate policy is never finished. It operates as a continuous, cyclic engine of organizational alignment. Comparing the blueprint and development pipeline side by side reveals how deeply they intersect. Implementing rules in Step 6 depends entirely on Component 10 to disseminate them. When reaching Step 8 to revise, that action is recorded directly into Component 12's revision history. This interlocking system supports Professor Boateng's central philosophy: policies must be credible, implementable, enforceable, and sustainable. He defines this framework as an action-oriented living document. To survive contact with reality, a policy must constantly adapt. Initial implementations fail and technologies change. When that happens, the organization iterates. As illustrated, Plan A is crossed out for Plan B and eventually Plan C, ensuring the document always matches the current operational environment. The true power of IT governance lies exactly at this intersection. By pairing a rigid 12-part document architecture with a relentless 8-step operational lifecycle, an organization ensures its IT strategy actually becomes reality. Managing information technology without governance is essentially organized chaos. Servers are provisioned ad hoc, access rights are granted on request, and security is left to individual discretion. To convert a scattered data environment into a secure, predictable architecture, an organization requires a mechanism to enforce order. That core mechanism is an IT policy. But an effective policy is rarely a simple list of rules pinned to a breakroom board. It is a highly engineered, modular framework designed to dictate exactly how hardware, software, and human operators interact. The mechanics of these frameworks are detailed in Information Technology Policy and Strategy, authored by Professor Richard Boateng of the University of Ghana Business School. While early chapters of the text separate the theory of policy from the methodology of strategy, the core engineering of these documents happens later. Our focus relies strictly on the mechanics outlined in Chapter 3. We are now examining how an organization actually builds, structures, and implements these directives from the ground up. Creating an effective IT policy requires two distinct structures operating simultaneously: a rigid document architecture to hold the rules, and a dynamic organizational workflow to deploy them. Boateng breaks this down into two specific models. First, a 12-component blueprint for drafting the physical document. Second, an 8-step lifecycle pipeline used to build and maintain it. An organization can outline abstract security goals all year. Mastering these two intersecting models is the absolute only way to translate those goals into enforceable human behavior. This diagram represents the standardized 12-component blueprint that serves as the foundation for every formal IT policy. Depending on the scale of the organization, a single document might not utilize every single block, but this structure remains the baseline. To see how this framework is populated, we can deconstruct a standard enterprise directive, the Clean Desk Policy. The first two components capture the necessary tracking data. Policy information details version numbers, active dates, and status, while the overview provides an executive summary of the document. Component 3 establishes the purpose and rationale. To secure employee buy-in, the document must state the precise business or security justification for the rules it is about to enforce. Component 4 dictates the scope. This section draws a hard line around the policy, explicitly defining exactly who and what technologies are governed by these rules. These first 4 blocks form the meta layer. They do not dictate any specific behavior yet. Instead, they build the legal and operational boundaries required for the actual rules to function. With the boundaries set, the document moves into the operational layer. Component 5 is authorization, identifying the specific governing body responsible for managing the policy. In our Clean Desk example, this authorization is assigned to the Office of Corporate Information Systems, or OCIS. Naming this office grants them the exclusive power to interpret and manage the rules. Component 6 contains the policy, standards, and guidelines. This is the core of the document, detailing the specific behavioral directives employees must follow. For a Clean Desk directive, this section mandates actions like actively locking workstations when stepping away and immediately clearing printer trays so sensitive documents are not left out in the open. But rules mean very little without enforcement. Component 7 establishes policy compliance. Here, the text dictates exactly how adherence is measured. For the Clean Desk policy, that means periodic walkthroughs, video monitoring, and internal audits, along with a clear outline of the consequences for non-compliance. Pairing the precise directives in Component 6 with the measurable metrics in Component 7 is what turns a corporate suggestion into an enforceable corporate mandate. The final section of the blueprint manages external context and future updates. Component 8 lists related standards to anchor the document to external laws, while Component 9 provides a strict glossary of definitions and terms to remove any ambiguity. Components 10 and 11 outline dissemination and maintenance. These dictate exactly how the rules will be shared with the workforce and how the policy will be kept up to date. Dissemination requires a multi-channel approach. Relying solely on an employee handbook is insufficient. The document stipulates the use of educational seminars, intranet portals, and direct email notifications to guarantee maximum reach. Finally, Component 12 is the revision history. This acts as a vital audit log detailing every change made over time, the date of that change, and the party responsible. That completes the 12-part blueprint. But a perfect document sitting in isolation on a hard drive is useless. To build, approve, and execute that structure, the organization needs an assembly line. That assembly line is Boateng's 8-step policy development process. It is the sequential pipeline required to bring the document to life. Step 1 is initiate and establish structures. Policy work is resource-intensive, so it only begins when there is a compelling organizational need. These initiation triggers are concrete events: the adoption of new cloud technologies, shifting government regulations, or newly identified vulnerabilities in the firm's operations. Step 2 is review and research. Before writing a single word, the coordinating team analyzes existing industry standards and global legal frameworks to understand the constraints. Step 3 is draft. This is where the actual writing happens, and where the coordinating team fills out the 12-component blueprint we just deconstructed. Step 4 is consult and discuss. The draft is circulated to legal counsel, middle management, and end users to gauge how the rules will actually impact daily operations. Step 5 is approval. The revised draft is sent up the chain for formal sign-off from the board or senior executive committee. These first 5 steps make up the formulation phase. They systematically take a raw business risk and transform it into an authorized, highly structured governance tool. The pipeline shifts from theory to reality in Step 6, implementation. The approved provisions go live across the network. Implementing policy is a human problem. This stage requires active training to ensure all relevant employees are fully familiar with the new mandates and understand how to execute them. Step 7 is monitoring. An organization cannot assume compliance. They must proactively verify if the policy is working as intended in the real world. This monitoring relies entirely on the compliance metrics established back in Component 7 of the document, utilizing periodic audits and operational feedback to track performance. That feedback data feeds directly into the final phase, Step 8, review, evaluate, and revision. At predetermined intervals, the overall impact of the policy is evaluated against its original goals. Any gaps or new risks are identified, looping right back into Step 1 to trigger a new cycle of updates. A corporate policy is never finished. It operates as a continuous, cyclic engine of organizational alignment. Comparing the blueprint and development pipeline side by side reveals how deeply they intersect. Implementing rules in Step 6 depends entirely on Component 10 to disseminate them. When reaching Step 8 to revise, that action is recorded directly into Component 12's revision history. This interlocking system supports Professor Boateng's central philosophy: policies must be credible, implementable, enforceable, and sustainable. He defines this framework as an action-oriented living document. To survive contact with reality, a policy must constantly adapt. Initial implementations fail and technologies change. When that happens, the organization iterates. As illustrated, Plan A is crossed out for Plan B and eventually Plan C, ensuring the document always matches the current operational environment. The true power of IT governance lies exactly at this intersection. By pairing a rigid 12-part document architecture with a relentless 8-step operational lifecycle, an organization ensures its IT strategy actually becomes reality.
Good morning, class. So, welcome back again to our session on IT policy and strategy, in chapter 3 of the book. Trust you are all doing well. Geraldine, how are you? And Terence, how are you?
Prophet, good.
Terence, you spell your Terence with TH instead of not TE.
Yes, Prof. My Terence is British Terence.
And the other one is what?
America.
So where's the Ghanaian Terence?
No, so there's no Terence in Ghana.
I hear you. Thank you very much. So you're listening to a video. I just want you to write 2 things that you maybe picked up from the video on your own piece of paper or your computer or your phone or wherever. I will ask you to read it out. So make sure you write something. I'm just giving you just 2 minutes to write something that you heard from the video. Just one, two things that you heard from the video, two things, two sentences that you heard from the video that is profound to you. Two things that you heard that is profound to you as an individual. Mhm. Okay, so those of you who have written something and you want to share, can go ahead and share it and tell me. So you can raise your hand and I'll call your name. or you can just go ahead. Bernard Kuku Fusu. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, so what I noted down here is that it says that the first five stages, which
Okay.
includes the initiation, review, the draft stage, consultation and discussion, and then approval, all forms part of the formulation stage.
Yes, please.
Yes, and then secondly, what I noted down is that the implementation stage is the most challenging stage due to its human requirement in terms of training of the staff.
Yes. Yes, very good point. Very good summary. In fact, this is a very good summary of what you want to hear today. A very good summary. I'm happy about what you've done, what you said. Yes, I see Daniel's hand up. Daniel, will you want to go ahead?
Yes, Prof. Good morning.
Good morning, Daniel.
So, I also noted that there are 12 components in terms of policy formulation and completion, the processes
Yes.
it goes through. And the processes differ per organization, but
Yes, please.
basically they mainly go through that set of process to make sure that the document forms a current document and it's live. And then the last bit I also noted is that even after the last stage, there are always periodic revisions of the document to
Act
always
843,
align
while
with current
guaranteeing
happenings
zero
and
preventable data.
ongoing issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Okay. Any other person having something a little bit different or to share? Any other person? Yes, Redeemer. Okay. But Redeemer, are you taking notice of those who are sharing?
Yes, Prof.
Okay.
So, Prof, my contribution would be that I also heard that policy is a continuous process and it does not have an end.
Policy is a continuous process. It does
Which
not have
does
an
not have an end. Yes, please.
okay. And you believe in that.
Exactly.
Why is that so?
So, Prof, in my view, like I last week, I asked the question where you explained that when something comes up which is not in the policy, it gets added up. So the policy makes room for such instances or occurrences. So looking at our daily lives in the organization, there will be new things that will definitely come up which the policy has not captured. And also the
Okay.
policies get reviewed. So for it to have an end means whatever comes up cannot be included in the policy.
Okay. 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 I agree with you on that point. I agree with you on that point. Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other person who wants to add something? The ladies are not speaking. Any reason why? Yes, Franklina. Thank you for joining.
Yes, sir, good morning. So we also heard that policy needs to have a legal foundation. So organizations don't just get up and make up laws or rules for people to comply by. So they need to be grounded in other approved laws and policies like the ISO standards and the other ones that have been acceptable around the world.
Okay. Okay. So well received. I agree on all of those things that have been said. I'll take the last person, Salon, and then we can start.
Yes, sir. Good morning. So the other part I had was on dissemination of these policies, that it shouldn't just be in the handbook alone, as that is not enough, but open communication seminars to ensure that this policy actually reach everyone in the organization, but not just in the handbook.
Okay. 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 The communication of the policy matters as much as in the implementation stage. So if you don't communicate it, nobody will get to know about the policy. So well argued. So what we want to do today is to please, it has been enabled for you to record on your own. I'm also recording. Is to try to understand what policies, how we develop policies, and what goes into policy development, and then the different phases of it. Yeah. Now, the first challenge that we have is that supposing we're asked to develop a social media policy for organization, looking at current issues going on in Ghana, and you are supposed to do something like that for your institution. What is the first thing that you could come into mind and in factoring into your in that policy? What do you think you would like to cover? What's the first thing that you like to cover in the policy for social media? Yeah, this is just brainstorming. It's not. I'm not saying that we should develop it as we would have done if it's a workshop. Yeah, but if you're supposed to develop a policy for social media, what will come into your mind, or what comes into mind? Yes, for your organization. Last week we even look at an example from Reuters and then from Adidas. Yeah. So what comes into mind if you're supposed to develop a policy for an organization, which is social media policy? Yes. Let me hear from you. Social media. You all use social media. If you're supposed to develop a policy for an organization of your choice, maybe wherever you work, and you have to develop a social media policy, what would you consider? Hmm? Yes, Terence.
Yes, Prof. I would consider acceptable use what employees can or cannot post.
Okay. What's acceptable use in terms of content contributions or posting on the web on social media? Okay. Yes. That's good. Any other dinner? We are here. We are quiet. Mm.
So I'm thinking about it. Good morning.
Good morning. You already talked about it, so tell me.
For me, I was thinking of having like a single source of truth. The fact that it's for the company doesn't mean everybody can just go and be posting anything. But then if it has to be like an information, then there should be clear guidance on who should be the one to post or communicate anything.
Well communicated. Yeah, thank you. I agree with that one too. Good, good. So the single source of truth will play a key role. In our session today, we are looking at 12 components that get into the assembly line of developing policies, and then some of the steps that we would follow to get the 12 components become a reality, and then some of the guiding principles. Okay, so we will take it one after the other and then discuss them. The 12 components start from policy information. It goes to overview, purpose and rationales, scope, authorization, policy standards or guidelines, or the elements in the policy compliance, related standards and references, definition and terms, dissemination, service maintenance, and revision history. Last week, when we were looking at some of the policies, we came across what we call the mass email policy for, I think, University of Michigan, and it had some of these components in it. I also showed you another one from another institution. Let me quickly show you one from University of Ghana, and see whether that one does justice to what we are talking about here. So an example could be we looking into University of Ghana's IT policy. Let's see whether it's comprehensive enough and captures what we expect it to capture. Captures what we expect it to capture. Okay. So what University of Ghana has an IT policy, and that IT policy is quite was established somewhere in this year, in 2022, June 24th, 2022. Oh, I'm just trying to share the screen. So, So this is the University of Ghana IT policy. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see it now. So as I said, it was enacted on June 24th, 2022. So just this week was maybe, should I say, 2 or 3 years, 4 years since it came into effect. The outline tells us that we have a preamble that will just establish the justification of the policy, the purpose, the scope, the review, the revision history. So you see, some of them are not arranged just as you're expecting it. Revision history was number 12, but this one is brought up. Review, how to get it reviewed was part of maintenance at number 11, but it's also here at number 6. The definition of terms was number 9. It's also here as 1, 2, 3, 4. Should I say 4, 5, 6? Number 6 rather. So every organization adapts it to what they expect. Let's look at the ending of it. So the ending has the references. Okay, those ones are, that's what references are related. There's references there, and I don't that it refreshes other policies in the institution. That is number 8 in our outline in terms of the anatomy of the policies that we were looking at earlier. So whatever we do, we have the policies, the policy itself having some of the things that we expect it to have. Okay. There's also a question about the policy information. Okay, this one we just have information communication policy, May 2022. We don't have any other information written about the policy in terms of the beginning or the opening. It goes straight to the preamble. But what we have here is that at least we understand that the overview is there, the purpose is there. So the preamble is the overview here. The overview is the preamble here. The purpose or rationale is also well stated. Then they even have a scope and then authorization. I think then there's a review. This authorization is, I think, maybe embedded in either the overview or the preamble. Okay. So we can say that we have a document that does good justice to what we are looking for. Good justice to what we are looking for. So we don't have it's not too much far away from what is expected. It's not too much far away from what's expected. And that's a very good outcome for us. Let's try to go back to our slides. And whilst we are going to our slides, we'll be checking what is in the policy document. We'll check what's in the policy document. Okay. Should I go back to the test? Which of them was easier for us? Okay. Okay. So usually when you have the policy, the document start with some policy information. The policy information will try to give us some details about the policy. For example, the policy number, the effective date, and then the revised date and the status being approved. On the cover of the University of Ghana policy, there is the number is 968, which published on June 24th, 2022. But this is coming from the reporter. The reporter is what is giving the number. The University of Ghana reporter is like a gazette. So in that report, reporter volume 29, number 6, number 968, and contains number 968, number 9. Mhm. I think the 968 is the policy number, but the number 9 is the volume number. So volume number 59, number 9. Number 9 being that for that volume, a volume may represent a year. So for that particular year, that particular year. This is the ninth edition of the reporter. And in that ninth edition of the reporter, you have a policy called a policy which is 968, which is for the information communication policy. That's what my best of my understanding. I've never explained it to us, but I'm just trying to look at it from what I know from other projects. Okay. Now, the overview will tell us what is the overall focus, and it summarizes the policy, explain the background and relevance, and may say where the policy can be obtained. So you can download the policy here. So if you look at it, the University of Ghana's preamble is trying to be our overview. It starts by saying the University of Ghana is a premier funded in is a research intensive university, and it explains the composition of University of Ghana. And then it goes on to discuss that our institutional processes and underlining this priority is the objective of modernizing management systems and using an integrated ICT approach. In this context, ICT is identified to be the foundation in maximizing student, faculty, and staff productivity, ensuring efficient service delivery, and enhancing teaching and learning, and improving the quality of research. It goes on to say that against this background, the University of Ghana Computing Systems, unfortunately, they have changed the name. Now it's called the University of Ghana IT Directorate. It used to be IT Directorate, then they turned it back to Computing System. Now going back to IT Directorate. It tells you how the university sometimes is very fluid about terminologies and naming of units. They may change based on quite a number of things that may have changed as of now. Okay, so it goes on to talk about the fact that the UGCS has taken up the mandate of developing policy documents that will guide the development of implementation and effective use of the ICT resources in the university. So it's kind of giving us the rationalization behind it. The set of policies will function side by side with other related policies related public documents as the reference document on the standard procedures and guidelines used within the University of Ghana. So this one doesn't tell you where you can download it or where you can access it, but at least it tells you some information about that. Then it goes on to the purpose. The purpose it's not just a statement. It's also emphasizing the why we have the policy, but looking at what brought it about, the fact that it could be triggered by a national level policy or an industry level policy. So at the national level, this policy draws its spirit from the Electronic Transaction Act and the Electronic Communication Act and the Data Protection Act. Now, looking at the fact that all the three play a key role, organization, all these things play a key role. Organization investors alike are urged to solicit, hold, and use and protect all information resources in their custody appropriately. Every time of information resource and technological resource in your custody that you have purchased, you are using, you have to hold them. You have to hold them appropriately. Sorry, the Cybersecurity Act is also one of the things that influences it. Designate public university as a national critical information infrastructure. Okay, so in the public, it's interesting. In the public, in the Cybersecurity Act, there are, and then in the Electronic Transaction Act, there are things in which government has specified that they are critical infrastructure. The critical infrastructure ones are mentioned in the Cybersecurity Act, and the critical database ones are mentioned in the Electronic Communications Act. So in the Electronic Communications Act, page 27, no, I think page 27, you will see what they call a critical database. That the information that you capture about students are critical database, and you have to make sure that you go through what is required by policy to register it as a critical database, so that if there's anything that happens to it, you are safe. Then in the Cybersecurity Act, there's another one that they designate as critical infrastructure because it's supporting our public institutions. So there's critical infrastructure and critical databases. All of these are found within our acts for us to govern them, and we have to put in appropriate measures to ensure that we are following what is required. Okay. Now, in the purpose, apart from the fact that they have to follow these, enact the policies because of these existing national level policies, they also outline why they want to do it at the institutional level. One, to ensure smooth operations of ICT infrastructure. Two, to protect UJ's sensitive information from unauthorized access. That's as expected of the Cybersecurity Act. And to ensure all users have adequate and available electronic resources for their work. It goes on to say to be cost efficient by standardizing ICT procurement and maintenance processes, and to protect IT assets from cyber-related attacks and prevent it from being used as a platform to create cyber attack somewhere outside the campus. And maybe sometimes inside the campus. You know, the cyber attack can be even inside the campus. They can the ICIC can be used to create cyber attack even inside from the inside the campus. The students themselves perpetuating it, or somebody hacking to a student's computer to do so. Okay, so that is the purpose. Then you go to the scope. The scope tells us that who does it apply to, and is it company wide or system wide, or is this just for a campus or a department or a unit or a subunit or a function? So the who is more about the people who are responsible. The what is the data that the who are authorized to see and work with. Good. So in here, they say the policy applies to all users accessing ICT resources and any third party who has been authorized to use. So the core statement is that all authorized users by the university, all authorized users, that those who are authorized to access the ICT resources, and any third party that we are working with who needs to access our who is authorized to use our IT resources. Now, the policy framework shall be used in conjunction with supporting guidelines, procedures, and codes of practice as developed as it becomes necessary and published on UGCS website. So, what is it trying to say? There are possibilities that some of the policies may may not cover everything that will happen in the future. So, we are leaving room that as other ones come up, we will use this document as a living document and other new things can be factored into it and reviewed. Okay. Now it goes on to say that number 4, policy does not limit the operation of the law. That is expressly as that expressly authorizes the and prohibits and regulates the use of electronic records or any other legal requirement for information to be posted, displayed, or transmitted. Okay. So that's the scope. Then they go to the review. The university goes to the review because they want to talk about what measures to be able to implement a start a review process. Now, it says that due to the fast pace of the closing, this policy shall be reviewed and updated every 3 years. However, any legislative and office changes affecting this policy may trigger a review. So the review is not necessarily going to wait for the 3 years. If there's something that's of necessity and they bring it to the attention of the respective teams, they will do something about it. Now, how did the policy come? Well, how was the policy come into fruition, or was became a living document or became an accessible document? The first thing is that it went to started a draft was done by Tapu Mauli, and it went to the head of IT and planning and security. Then it went to Deputy Sito. Okay. Goes to Deputy Sito, then it goes to Professor Yita. Professor Yita, if it's Helen Yita, then Helen Yita is from the English department, a professor there. So I think he went for language review in terms of the content. That's why he went to Professor Yita. Then he went to content review. That has to do with another level of content review has to do with the Sito for Deputy Sito for IT planning and security and support. Okay. Then you also have the vice chancellor's committee. The vice chancellor may have set up the committee. In fact, technically, the vice chancellor sets up a committee, and the committee will do the whole job. So this could be that number 1 to number 5 is part of what the committee received and the engagement they did. Then after the committee finishes and gives their report to the vice chancellor, the vice chancellor will send it back to UGCS and to be given to the contents review contents review update, so that they may look at it, may review it, and then think about what updates they can give to it. Then to go to other institutional body, other key component, key sub-units in the university, which are seen as indirect stakeholders to the policy. So one will be the director of public affairs, who is in charge of our social media platform. So you need to capture their views. And then it also went to Professor Chris Gordon, who is also a seasoned academic. And Professor Chris Gordon was, I think, at that time the head of IESS, that's Institute of Environmental Studies and Sanitation, something like that. It has to do with the environment. So he went to them. Then he came back to C2, the actual C2. And then after C2, he went to a review at the Business Executive Committee. That's the committee that kind of advises the VC. They are representatives from across all the key units in the University of Ghana. So they dealt with it. Their leaders were there. They dealt with it and gave their view. And then from there, it went to the IT Management Board of the UGCS. Then from the board, it went to the Chief Risk Officer, who doesn't sit in the UGCS. He sits in audit. So that to check whether there's any risk that we may be liable to. Then from there, it went to the legal counsel of the university to check all the politics behind it. Then from there, it came back to the CTO, who and then had to implement it. So looking at the journey, you see where it started from 2014 and ended in 2022. Policy is not easy to develop. It goes through several iterations, and these are some of the realities that I always mention. The authorization of this policy is coming from the even the CTO. He will present it through the registrar to the university council, and the university council will say the policy has been passed. They have just for enactment. So they will pass it. They're the final governance body that will pass it because they're the highest, is the apex of the institution. The apex of the institution. So, and though after doing that, then authorization has been set for the policy for us to be able to use it. Good. So who is responsible? I've seen your hand coming. Who is responsible for managing the policy? Its development, revision, and interpretation. Now you look at our table here, it looks like it's a CTO and his team. A CTO and deputy CTO for planning, security, and support. They are responsible for managing the policy and making sure that it conforms. Okay. Yes, Daniel.
Hello, Prof. So,
Yes.
I was just asking, looking at the years of the policy went through from 2014 all the way to, I think, 2024. I've forgotten the years. I just want to ask, is there a specific year a policy development should go through, or it varies across organizations? Because this is very long, and if you start policy development from 2014, then it means that before you get to 2020, there's been some new ideas. Does it mean that they also add on at the various committee levels or different levels? And does it, I mean, I just want to ask those bits, looking at the years of how long this policy took in the process. I'm not sure if, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It's a good question. Now, the reason why it may have taken long could be so many reasons and could be so many factors. Sorry. Now, first of all, I need to point out that policies usually take about 5 years in very large institutions to get it passed. But sometimes the immediacy of the issue, it may be released earlier. Number two, the growth of the institution. Throughout these stages, technology has been growing in terms of knowledge and its forwardness. What I mean, the apparent need of the technology. So if you look at it very carefully, after COVID, everything was rushed up. Look at what happened. The meetings became more after COVID. Look what happened after COVID. April. So there was a whole break. Then April 2021, there was a wake up. Now, a lot of things happened between that time. I remember I was part of a committee to select the new deputy C2 and then the deputy C2 for IT and planning, and then deputy the actual C2. And part of the things that we challenged them was making sure that the policies become formal, but they had them as guidelines, not necessarily passed at the university level. Things that they had with them and that they were just holding on to. Because even between 2017 and 2021, you remember that a lot has changed. And initially, too, we didn't have Sito. We didn't have a full Sito who was a full time with us. That person came around. So if I can remember very well, he came around. He spent about 6 years or so. He came around 20 when the whole conversation starts. He spent about let's say about 8 years. So my that's around 2014, 2014, 2015. We started building the city concept. Because there was a consultant that was managing the whole a consultancy through the government, government funding from the Chinese government, was that was handling all these things. Then we handed over to a CITO that was selected. And then the CITO was selected. That CITO came from, I think, what's the name of the Ashanti Goldfields. So later part of his tenure, anytime that he had to be renewed, there was also the possibility that he wanted to go back because the where the work he was doing in those kind of big institutions, I think for the mining sector and other sectors, he was a big guy. They wanted to attract him back there. So there was a time that he actually was going for retirement and we needed to bring a new C2. But all of this happened around the 2018, 2019, then the COVID time. So if you realize, I mentioned to you last time that we were told to come and develop guidelines for a policy for what online learning when we wanted to go online. So when when COVID happened, everything that mattered concerning teaching online became important. So we had to formalize all the processes of IT. And IT all of us in IT gained visibility. And as soon as IT gained visibility, then that means attention to IT policies, attention to IT guidelines became necessary. And to be able to protect us as an institution, these things had to be formalized. So a document that has been restricted for a long time, all of a sudden they wake you up and tell you bring it to business executive committee. Do you realize? And I believe that the CITO had a discussion with senior management concerning other policies that maybe the e-learning policy that we're working on. They realize that all these other policies have to be approved and then streamline the university. So that one too came up, and then it went through the process. And as soon as it came up in 2021, less than within a year, they are done. They are done what they need for to pass it. So if you look at it very carefully, between 2021 April to 2022, it's about 9 months or 11 months. They are actually getting the thing done. So sometimes external pressure can let them hurry the process. That's one. Number two, organization have bureaucracy. So if you have got an institution that has bureaucracies, it takes time for things to happen. Thirdly, policies should be done at the senior management level. When senior management do not see technology as the mainstream, they just see it as an enabler. They may not take it as a critical driver. So I think around that same time, technology was being seen as a critical driver to where we are going. Hence, the change that happened. So please, there's a lot of institutional growth. And as institutions are growing, and then there's also impact from what's happening in the environment on technology, the request and the demand for IS infrastructure and IS skill sets become more. And then some of these things start. The policies have to be in place for them to get their act together. And to even get some for some institutions, that's not even give them their accreditation or their legal right to even exist. Because, of course, if you're a bank and you don't have the IT well laid out, the Bank of Ghana can shut you down. Okay. So please, I hope it answers your question. We have had a bizarre growth through of IT, and the visibility came because of COVID, and that's why you see a change in attitude, and then a strategic focus on IT happening later in the latter stages. If there's no question again, then I'm continuing, please. Thank you very much. So, okay, Franklin has a question. Franklin, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So does it have to be completed before it is like implemented, like from 2014 to 2022, or like bits and pieces of it that are approved in a way? Do they begin implementing those before they get to the final stage?
We learned in, I don't want to speak about an institution, but what we learned is that organizations may have guidelines which are recommended as best practices whilst they pursue the path for policy. Does that answer you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So the policy statements then are rolled out in the section 6, where you have the actual statements that govern the technology. So glorious definitions, let me jump that one. Good. So the first policy is remember, this document is a combination of different policies. The IT policy of UJ has email in it, has acceptable use, has IT general guidelines, has some other dimension in websites, policy and everything, the same document. So don't be surprised about the fact that you are seeing another overview. It's because you are looking at it from this perspective. Please, I'll put this particular policy is in your resources in Sakai, but for the purpose of this class, let me put it in the chat room on what's on in here, the chat room in Zoom, so that members can look at it once we go on. Good. So I have shared it. I hope you have received it. So the policy statements will then come out in terms of what they want to govern. So if you look at it for the policy of acceptable use, all users shall comply with existing university policies. It is important that all members of the university acquaint themselves with the existing policies. Users shall not access or interfere with or remove any ICT facility, data, or information unless they have been authorized to do so. Users shall be given access to ICT facilities in a manner that is consistent with their role. All use of ICT facilities shall be lawful, honest, and decent, with due regard to for the rights and responsibilities of other people. Users are responsible for the appropriate use of all resources assigned to them. So general username, security information, then they go to notification of security compromise. So what is your incident reporting guidelines? This is where it is. Something happens, how are you going to report it? And where do you report it to? Then you have duty of the university as the owner of the critical information infrastructure is to report a cyber security incident. Okay, the duty of the university. Okay. Now, the university as a critical information infrastructure shall report a cybersecurity incident within 24 hours after the incident is detected to the relevant sectoral computer emergency response team. That's what we call SET. So you have to adhere to this one. Now, when you look at it, sometimes organizations are torn between two. There is a cybersecurity authority you have to adhere to and report to them according to what they have said in their Act 1038. And then there is the privacy part you also have to adhere to and report to them. If you don't report to the two on time, you could actually attract certain penalties. I'm not going to discuss penalties today, but I'm just trying to let you understand that all these are captured within the policies. Okay. Access to communication, UG email. Then they have acceptable use, unacceptable use, and then processing of special data. Okay. Then from there they have email policy. Then for the email policy, they also have bring your own device policy. So all of them have got their scope, their and the policy statements regard in line with that particular policy. Then they have IT procurement policy, how do you buy IT procurement, and how do you buy or procure IT infrastructure and resources, sorry. And then they also have another one is here, if I'm right. Procurement guidelines, okay. Good. Then the UG website policy, all of them in one document. And then information security policy. So they have been able to put all of them together to guide human behavior. Good. So that's what we call the policy statements. Number 7, compliance. Compliance are who measures compliance, who qualifies for exemptions, what happens on violations. Okay. Now you have measurement. How are you going to measure what is going on? You have to define your KPIs and KRIs. KRIs are your key risk indicators, and KPIs are your key performance indicators. If the policy is working, how will you know? If the policy is not working, how you know? And then, are there any exemptions for certain people concerning the policy? If an employee is found to be in violation of a policy, what will you do? Good. So a very good policy should have all of these things well defined in the outline of the policy. Let me see whether this policy has anything. Retention of data. Okay, data security. Compliance, okay, so there's compliance here. Compliance with legislation, okay. A risk assessment and security review, okay. Breaches of the security, okay. So we have the similar thing that is expected of us to have. Any user who suspects a security breach of any information resource shall report it to UGCS. The event of the information security breach, UGCS shall provide specific guidance on the steps to follow. So the steps may not be in the policy right now, but because it's procedure. So the steps will be in what they may have defined within the institution itself. Because they have different types of breaches. Email breach may be different from website breach. But look at what it says, authorization. The University Council has the ultimate authority to take whatever action it deems necessary to protect the UG against security breaches. The University Council. The chief disciplinarian on the university campus is the vice chancellor, who also reports to the University Council. So the University Council has a number of different people within the university, some from government, and then chaired by somebody nominated by government to be able to look after the university. But they meet only, I think, 4 times in a year. So you can't say you are waiting for them. Once they have not met, you are the vice chancellor is the chief disciplinarian, and he may just through a phone call, through the appropriate means, contact some of the members or contact the chair of the council on certain issues so that you can make decisions and go fast. Okay. So compliance is very, very necessary. Then we go to references and definitions. Yes, their own came earlier. Definitions came earlier. But references is below. So let's continue. References is below. We have all the things there, just that it's in different places. Okay. Then dissemination and then maintenance. Policy awareness and disciplinary procedure. That's all part of issues on the first part that on the previous part we're discussing. Compliance and then non-compliance. Okay. They're supporting policy and procedure and code of practice. Okay. This is like saying the related standards. So this policy rate shall be used in conjunction with supporting guidelines and procedures and codes of practice published with it, which are available on the UGCS website, or authorized users who access UG network systems and facilities identified in this policy shall familiarize themselves with these documents and work in accordance with them. Anybody who is authorized. Okay. In compliance with Data Protection Act, all personal sensitive data shall be stored and secured with adequate protection. So the references are here, or the related documents that they are using are also here. They also consulted some other the documents of other universities. I think you can see them listed here. They have finished their job. Okay. So that brings us to the end of this example that we are looking into. So let's go back to our document. So dissemination is as important as implementation. Remember, we saw it in the video that the implementation stage is linked to dissemination, which is a component in sure that people understand it. Please, you cannot communicate. Please, you cannot communicate the policy just through it being on your website. You have to have different formats that people may need. So currently, University of Ghana is using infographics and short should I say flash simple flashcards to highlight some of the policies and other strategic documents to faculty, and they email them to us occasionally. So simple flashcards, they are doing that quite well. I've seen that happening. I think it's coming from the public affairs unit. Okay. Now, in terms of how the thing the policy will be maintained and reviewed, we mentioned it in the beginning that there's a section for review, and that also covers maintenance. Okay. So our UG policy has done quite a number of good jobs here. The revision history, what it has gone through, and the summary of changes. We also have it here. So everything, just that we are a little bit haphazard in presenting the way we suspected of. So we have it here. Revision history is here, and whatever we went through. Okay. So why it ends up being auditors and regulators and courts ask what rule was enforced on a given date. So in case, and the similar question that you asked earlier, that at the time that this was not there, what was there? So that in case something happened, we can use that at this time it was not yet accepted. And at this time, this was what was there. Okay. So what goes into developing the policy itself? First of all, you have to initiate and establish, review and do your research, prepare a policy draft, and then circulate and consult, creating the foundation part. Then you will ratify and communicate, implement, monitor, and review again and revise. Okay, so the first evaluation, decide on what triggers the policy for development, for a need for development or review. Decide who will have the responsibility to develop this policy and establish a coordinating group if considered necessary. So what we see here in our revision document was the fact that, sorry, our revision document, which is before you, was the fact that there's a statement about how it to be reviewed. And it guides us on how to start the review. And then who owns it? I think the review is done still by UGCS on which can be triggered by somebody else who is external. Then the review and research for us, we have to state the relevant resource documents. If you look at the UG one, there are documents that they refer to and they research on some from other universities across the world. The names are at the back of the policy of the institution that they consulted with at the back. Review existing practice and policy in the firm. Identify the issues that need to be addressed. Now, let me just ask a question. Why do you think that if you have the document open to the revision history, the revision history, you see there's a name at the first level. There's a name there. First job, Mauli Tapu, and then it went for review again at the head information technology and planning unit. It looks like Mauli was working in the then IT directorate or UGCS, and after doing the draft, his supervisors or the leadership they took over and they started championing it. But the question I wanted to ask is that why is it necessary that the draft is initiated from the IT unit or the IT department? Why is it necessary? I'm not saying that always that will start from the initiation will start from there, but why is it necessary? For an example that we're looking, why do you think it's necessary that it started from there? Yes, Bernard.
Yeah, Prof. I'm thinking that because the IT units are the process owners, that is why it is
Good.
initiating. Yes.
Process ownership. That's very good. Yes, that's very good. And they may also have access to the existing policies that you may need to review and consult with. Good. So it's always good to start with that unit. In case they in case they have they may have certain unofficial documentation on these issues, they may even share it throughout the development process. Now, study relevant resource documents and legislation in the firm, the industry, and the nation, and where necessary globally. Review existing practice and policy in the firm or the institution. Identify issues that need to be addressed. That's what we expect you to do in the review part. So, if you look at the way of our revision history, we kind of consulted a diverse number of people to get it done. Okay. Then from there you go to making it real and legitimate. Preparation of the draft policy. And we saw that there was a draft policy that was done. And then circulation and consultation. It went to Professor Ita. They came back, they did a correction. It went to the VC's committee. They came back, they did the corrections, and that came to the committee also gave feedback. And in May 2017, came back to the head of IT and planning and security. He did his right feedback information, his right input, and then took it to Director of Public Affairs. He also did that and took it to Professor Christopher Gordon. Now from there, he came to CITO. And CITO, from CITO, he went to the Business Executive Committee. And then from there, went to the periodic. Okay. So from there, went to Business Executive Committee, then went to the CITO again for a periodic review, which was part of it. So quite a number of people have had hands to opportunity to input or give feedback onto the documentation. So circulation and consultation with experts and not non-experts matter. Even look at Professor Ita. I told you that that person has an was from the languages department, I think preferably English, and we have done a content review in the essence of the document itself, the English language and the wording. Okay, then after that you go to the IT management board, pass through the risk officer, legal counsel, end up at ending up at final content review with the CITO. So from CITO you go to council, and council will ratify it. So after that, then you can go ahead and then communicate to everybody, wider than the members you work with, wider than the members you work with. After ratification, the real work will begin in terms of implementation. How are you going to implement it? Who are you going to, who is going to do the implementation work? Who is going to be ensure that people understand it? For example, when Sakai came and they established a policy that is going to be part of our e-learning platform, the university gave a directive that they should start offering Sakai classes for all lecturers. Even if you are good in Sakai, you still have to go to, and they did it for different levels: intermediate, fundamental, experts. So if somebody knows how to use Sakai or a learning platform already, he may jump the intermediate and the foundation and go to intermediate, because he's just going to set up his courses and then do the rest of the things that are needful. So what we realize is that implementation matters. Then the monitoring then will come. You have to put in measures to do the different types of monitoring. There may be ongoing monitoring. That means that for some of the, for example, for the security issues in terms of breaches, you have to do ongoing monitoring with zero breach with a zero breach target, that you don't want any breach at all. But for the other things like training and getting checking whether all the lecturers in the university of Ghana use the platform, or you are following the ethics in the documentation or the rules in the documentation, you may have to actually do different types of engagement. Some of them will come from focus groups engagement, some of them will come from service, and some of them will come from you actually establishing a reporting desk that if somebody has an issue, you can come and report there or observe some untoward use of technology in the university, the person should come and report to you. Then lastly, you have the review, evaluation, the revision. So at a predetermined time, the UG document say 3 years. Review and evaluate the policy impact, taking the stakeholder and feedback and other developments. Taking in the feedback, the stakeholder feedback and other developments. Now, what does it mean by stakeholder feedback? When you are doing monitoring, people will give you feedback. It's not all the feedback that you rush to go and change the whole policy or change the whole guideline. Some of them you just put it down and take note of it. So that when you start having institutional meetings towards the review, then you can bring it up. So it's not everything that you can just get up and say you want to change. Sometimes the reporting that the person is doing is whatever he's going through is just a characteristic of the unit the person belongs to. It may just be applying to business school, doesn't apply to mathematics, doesn't apply to physics. So if you go just step in and just do a rule that will affect the whole university, it might not be advisable. You may have to allow them to have system level unit level policies or unit level standards, actually standards and guidelines that can be able to govern behavior and the use of whichever technology that they are using. So, but please, the A steps are interlinked or with the components. For example, implementation will link straight with the component of the service maintenance and then the communication. Making sure that we'll link directly with the communication, making sure that we communicate the documentation and do the training. But revision has a revision history already as a section. There's a section for you to write on how review will be done. It's all captured within the UG policy that we looked at. Okay, good. So let's look at where would your draft have died? Imagine submitting a social media draft for real adoption. And the business you wrote it for. Walk it through the A steps. At which step will you store and why? Okay. Now, what is asking us is that we should look at the A steps and ask ourselves, be honest with ourselves, that what steps tend to matter to any policy development process. For example, at step 2, you have to look at Ghanaian law and system practice, and let it inform what you put in there in terms of consultations. Step 4, which stakeholders will you object? Will you object marketing, the owner, the employees themselves? So who should be part of it? Who should be part of it? Okay. And then that's step 7. Could anyone actually check compliance with what you wrote? Is there compliance read in the document, or you are just putting rules and penalties? There's nothing about compliance in it. So you may have to go back and the drawing board and do same as expected of you. Now, beyond the 7 the steps that we have also got 7 principles behind the steps. The first principle that I will mention is the initiation criteria. Policy work when there's only a compelling need. So the need has to be well defined, and the need has to be well identified as something that the institution without it will lose that much. So if you don't actually establish the need and why the need is relevant, it's very difficult for people top management to throw resources into it. Number 2, the initiation process should be credible, implementable, enforceable, and sustainable. Impact analysis on both IT system and end users belongs in the planning and review stage. So whilst you are actually starting the process at the foundational stage, always try and do a reconnaissance or a feasibility study to see whether this policy is relevant to the institution, what impact could it make when the policy comes in or when the guideline comes in. You also want to make sure that you are brought in different stakeholders so that the thing is a credible document. It's not just for only 2 people, it's for the whole institution, and the institution are giving feedback on it. Then it should be an action-oriented living document. Policies are seen as such. I think recently when the Minister for Digitalization was talking about one of their policies. Said they put it on their website for people to comment on them. But the comments they have received are very good. They have used to improve the document. Now they are at level 5 for documents. But the website is still having level 1 where you could comment it. Then decentralized and centralized. Individual work groups are needed where subject matter experts are needed. One person cannot sit here and develop a good framework for an institution. So you have to divide the work. So sometimes what happens is that you may have individual work groups who meet with the certain key subject matter experts and they may engage it. So if I'm developing a policy for a hospital, I'll have some key subject matter experts like maybe head of surgery, head of cardiovascular systems or whatever it is. Each of them can be part of a good team, or they may nominate an employee from their unit to come and be part of a team that can be able to do the brainstorming of the policy to see what is relevant and what's not relevant. Now, despite this, you still also need a central unit that will collate everything, bring it together. So you have the centralized in terms of talking to subject matter experts and other non-experts too. And then we have the centralized in terms of bringing everything together to coordinate for consistency and then handle the policy dependency, what relates to what. Okay. Then you also have the fact that the policy development process has to be transparent and interactive. So much of the transparency also comes from the fact for the point 4 and the point 3 that we mentioned earlier. You have to leverage technology to be able to do so, so that something can allow people to be able to comment and bring their views upon it. Okay. Then you have a flexibility and a focus on functionality. Okay, so in such a scenario, when you're developing the policies, you need to be able to create an environment in which people have confidence to be able to share what they know. And that when the policy is not yet been enacted or been passed, they have something to fall back on when they are taking decisions, when they are actually using your software, when they are engaging. When they are engaging in the activities. So for example, I have an antivirus software, I need to be able to use it. But you have said that before we can install any new antivirus software, it has to be approved by head office. And if head office have not approved it, but what I'm facing virus, what can I do? So you have to put in certain guidelines that allow them to be able to use it, the technology as expected. I remember I was working in UNESCO, and then there was a time that we went to buy new printers. But when they brought the printers was not connecting well with the machines that we had. Apparently, I think if I remember I remember well, the computers that were being used were Windows. Windows used to have one called Windows Millennium. But the printers have been bought for the new version of Windows, which was Windows. At that time, it was Windows 10. Good. So, but you cannot upgrade UNESCO satellite offices like the offices in Ghana and West Africa and other IT infrastructure to Windows 10 without getting approval. Because across the institution, the worldwide institution, all of us are using Windows ME. How do you guys get up and go and buy equipment, and the equipment only speaks to Windows 10? So we had to actually wait and do a lot of things, go to a lot of bureaucracies before we could even get opportunity to do partial installation to get the printers to work, because they couldn't allow us to. Because some of the systems they had only work in Windows ME. Some of their global platforms that they had to be able to share documents and stuff was 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 built in a robust manner for Windows ME. Now you are going to Windows 10 and you are saying that everybody should upgrade. They can't just get up and upgrade because they have done a lot of infrastructure investment in the Windows 10. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that in such a scenario, you have to offer flexibility. Those who want to use a printer may have to maybe set up one computer which is controlled by you, which is just purely Windows a Windows 10 machine, and that can allow you to do the printing in the office. Whilst in the global platforms and doing their individual work, you allow them to still use the Windows ME so that they are not locked out of the institutional application that they use. So for the institutional application, you can use this one, but for other things, we can allow you to do something else. So you have to be flexible. And while the policy is not developed, what kind of guidelines are you going to allow them to be able to work with? Good. And that means that you are focusing on functionality, not just for being strict on just security, but you are focusing on functionality because people have to get their work done. And if they don't get, there's no other alternative for them. And Windows ME is slow and they want to use Windows, the next version of Windows, which is Windows 10. What could happen is that they may bring their own laptops to office and they start using the Windows 10 on it. The last one is the implementation and then interpretation. The policies we are developing are not the ceiling, they are the floor. What I mean is that they are the baseline that others can build upon. They're the baseline what I've taught here, they are baseline for others can build upon. So please have an open mind when you're developing your policies for your class challenge and for your own company. And I told you that there are quite a number, we have been developing a policy for them. The Science Institute website that we went last week has quite a number of information that can guide you in developing SIM. Okay, so I think I can wrap it up here and take in more questions. So your policies that we develop are all just the floor, not the ceiling, meaning that you can allow units to have their own systems and standards, which will guide their behavior. How so far as they're adhering to what the mother institution is saying. So thank you. I think you have been able to go through this very, very well. What are your views and what are your questions? Let me answer them. Hmm. What are the questions? Or you want me to give you questions to answer? Okay. If you don't have anything to say, then I'll move on to introducing some of the things I will do next week. Okay. Rima, are you guys okay? Do you understand it?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
Okay.
Dana's hand is up.
Daniel, please go ahead.
Yes.
Dana.
So
Oh, Daniel. Okay, Daniel. I thought it was Daniel. Sorry, I was not here this.
okay. So please, can we implement policies that may be against the laws of or the rules and regulations of a country? So, for instance, if you are designing a policy for data protection, and then for you, if a customer, so far as the customer has given you their information, you have the right to do with it as you want. However, the rules in the country saying that you can't do anything you want with customer information. So would a policy be designed and then taking the rules governing the country into consideration, or you can design your own policy even if it's against the rules?
If you are within the country, you have to adhere to the country because it means that you are actually engaging in illegality. That you are an organization because of the definition of what an organization is within the country, and you are registered to be able to follow the requirements of or the policies in the country. So your registration as an organization can be revoked if you tend to go against what the country states. Number two, you should also know that consumers are now knowledgeable. One consumer can go and report you to data protection council and they'll come after you. But when they get to know that what you are doing is in an illegality, they can report you.
But in my policy, it's not illegal.
Is in
Also,
your policy. Your policy has to be developed with reference to other policies and some of the jurisdiction that you are in. So how did you develop your policy without reference to those ones?
okay, I
Means
see.
that your
Okay,
policy
sure.
is in effect is in error.
Okay, okay, well noted. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a good question that you asked. Very good question. Yes. Any other view?
Hello, Prof.
Yes, please.
Parents, please. To add up to Dinah's contribution, I think there are actually some organizations when it comes to data protection and privacy that they have a way around it by forcing you to use the data in the way that is not required, by forcing you or making it a requirement for your consent to be able to push further to use the data to do whatever they want to do. But
Okay,
because,
so
eh,
okay.
but
So you said
because
they are forcing you. The
yes,
problem
it's
is
like
that some
yes, like
go ahead.
if you don't consent to it for us to use the data to do it, then okay, we can't continue with the process.
Yes, but that one is true. You are the one who said the organization is there. You didn't tell you to come to them. You are the one who said you want to use their service. So for you to use their service, then you have to adhere to what their requirements. So you have to follow what they say. It's like Samsung that we were talking about last week. That if you want to use the Samsung apps and stuff, you should know that Samsung will be analyzing and sharing your information. You should know that some of the information will pick from the phone automatically um without your knowledge.
Prof, I get the sense. I'm even talking about more stricter ones in line with recruitment. You know, some multinational organizations can request for even your pay slips or maybe like financial information, which maybe these informations are confidential.
No, they are confidential to an extent, but they may tell you that if you are sending it, redact this one, this, redact this part. But they are asking that because you are asking for a service from them. Now,
Um,
it is the responsibility of the firm who is asking you to protect your information. As for you going to look for a service from them, they are going to right to ask you what they need.
okay.
I hope you understand me. The only thing is that you don't give them consent to share the information. So if you find it elsewhere, you can hold them responsible.
All right, Prof. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think I see any person here again.
Yeah, please, my hand is
And
up.
cleaner.
Franklin, okay, good.
Sir, please, when we talk about exemption under the compliance, is it that they are exempted because it doesn't apply to them at all, or their function is critical, so they need to be exempted to do some of the things that are not allowed?
They are exempted because the institution thinks that does not apply to them, but it depends on what the activity is. Exemption is defined by the person doing the policy. I hope so. You have to read the policy. So I don't know if you have got the UG one. You have to actually read it and know what type of exemptions exist in terms of compliance. And it might not be a blanket exemption for everything. There may be some specific things that on issue of this, the legal has the right to do this to your data. So, for example, and according to the Data Protection Act, security agencies have the right to request for certain types of information from any of data subjects or the data controller, those who collect the data, if they suspect that the institution they are collecting the data on is engaged in any fraudulent activity. Data protection can sequester their information. Yes, please. Is there anything more? Let me see. I don't see any hand. I'm right. Okay.
Yes,
So
Prof.
this is good. So thank you very much. Next week we'll be talking about IT strategy. But how far with your the class assignment, the group ones? How far have you been able to set up your groups?
Yes, Prof. We have set up our groups. So I'll be sharing the list with you.
Okay.
Yes, Prof.
And everybody's okay with it.
For now, yes, we are just having some few challenges with setting up of the last group, but that should be handled by the close of today.
Okay then. Thank you very much. I'm okay. And I look forward to looking at this. The groups, have you met? Is there any kind of confusion? Who are the group leaders? Is there any of the group leaders here? Can you identify some of them? Mm-hmm. Redeemer, who are the group leaders?
Prof, they're in the class. I was expecting them to like come out and then like
So mention
speak.
their names. Mention their names.
Okay, so okay, she has raised the hand. Anita, Richmond, and then Ifwasam. Then Adrian.
Okay. Adrian that doesn't talk in class too much. It's a person leading a group. Interesting. Okay, so can we hear from group member Anita, Adrian? Let me hear from you. I want to know how the groups are functioning.
Hello, Prof. Good morning.
Or are we done your first meeting?
Please, we are yet to meet. We had new members yesterday, so we are yet to officially meet on Zoom or Teams to discuss the question.
Okay. 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 So are yet
And
to
we
meet.
are Team LinkedIn. Yes, please.
Team LinkedIn. Okay.
Yes, please.
Interesting. Okay. Yes. Adrian, your group. Any meetings so far?
No, not yet. We are now planning on meeting. We just formed the team, and our name is Group NVIDIA.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Which else? Redeemer, which other team is there? You Redeemer, what team are you in?
I mean Ifwasam's group.
I say first speaking.
Sir. So Team Oracle here.
Yes, Team Oracle, we are listening to you.
Said we just put the groups together this week, so we'll meet next week.
Hey, you will meet next week.
Yes.
The work is a lot. Are you going to really wait till next week? Okay. Well, the final, I think you have 4 teams, so the final 3 are
Yes,
spoken.
Prof. This group metaverse, please.
Wow. Metaverse, yes.
So please, we are yet to officially meet, but we have our group complete now.
Yes, well received.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So if there's any challenges, let's know. Richmond, sorry, please, you can go ahead.
No, please, there are no challenges. If there's anything, we'll get back to you, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, all group members. I look forward to next week, group members, you have to tell us your roadmap and how you're going to do the work and your division of labor and what you have done, what you have started to do. We would like to see your first set of slides or document that shows all the members of the group, your index numbers, your phone numbers, the details, and then what role they are playing in the organization. We want to map it out incrementally. So get it ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome.